running.
Sure. I'll wait for the camera on. I'm not that person.
Yeah.
No.
So it's going to automatically do it.
Okay, perfect.
Fun.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
So we're going to talk about Zipforms and transactions. So Zipforms is the technology that allows us to access contracts. It used to be that contracts were printed in quadruplicate, and there would be a residential purchase agreement, and it would be 4 pages thick, 4 pages thick per page. Every page of the purchase agreement was ×4. And then you'd have to press really hard. You'd have to put a separator in between, press really hard, tear off different copies for different people. It's always fun. And then each brokerage in the office would have a file cabinet for every single contract. There would be a file for every single part of the contract. So you'd have to walk over to the file cabinet or to the wall with the cubby holes, and you'd have to pull out a paper for every single part that you wanted to, or whatever contract you wanted to use. Those contracts didn't get updated that frequently because offices would have to buy new contracts all the time, right? So technology has made it where the contracts can be updated weekly, basically. I mean, it seems to me like every time I log in to Zipforms, the contracts are updated. Now, you may not realize that because if you are accessing your contracts from car.org, they're automatically updated. You never see anything change behind the scenes. Whenever you go to car.org and log in, that's where the transaction files are. You're automatically being presented with the newest form. If you download the Zipforms software onto your computer, so it's a program that you download. In my shared folder, I have the software for PC and for Mac. So if you have my shared folder, you should download that and install it on your computer. So I can show you where that is. If you don't have access to my shared folder for people online, email me at jjwallack@kw.com. So it's jjwallack@kw.com.
So what do we download on?
You have it. I installed it on your computer. So
what is the advantage of
this? So the advantage to having the software installed on your computer is, what if you're in a place that has no internet access? How are you going to write an offer, or how are you going to make a counter offer? How are you going to do anything that has to do with anything contract related if you're in a place that has no internet?
Even to send it as the DocuSign?
So you don't, I'm just talking about, like, you can figure it out, like, to have internet quickly somewhere maybe,
okay,
but not enough time to work on something.
okay.
So you can prepare the entire thing. Like, let's just say you're in a hotel room in Mexico. There's no internet. Like, I don't know, it's really hard sometimes to get internet there. Or you have cellular data and it's really slow or something. There are times where the CAR website is not working. It says down for maintenance, right? What do you do when it's down for maintenance from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. and you have to work, like that was your time that you had allotted to do something, or you have to respond to a counteroffer or something, it's always good to have a downloaded copy of the software on your computer. So in my shared folder, there is a folder called Zipforms. And you can download the PC or the Mac software. When you install it, you're going to have to authenticate it using your CAR login. I think James, you already have it. Probably, yeah, you have it. You have it installed for sure. So it's good to have that just in case. You know, it's good to have that available. Now, every time I log into the software version, it connects to car.org in the cloud and downloads anything I've worked on in the cloud. Whenever I work on something in the cloud, it saves in the cloud at CAR and then downloads to the software version when I open the software version. If I work on something in the software version, when I press save, it uploads to the cloud. So there's always a version saved in the cloud. And then it syncs back and forth with your desktop. Okay. So that's really cool. Now, when you open the desktop version, when the program starts, it goes to CAR and checks if you've worked on anything there and downloads it. It also checks if it's using the most up-to-date forms. And it will say, there are new versions of the forms, would you like to download? Yes or no? And then you can say yes, and it'll download all the forms, all the new forms. What I've found is twice a week, I get that prompt, would you like to download new forms? So I know that those forms are being updated literally a couple of times a week. I mean, always being updated. So that was not something that could have happened in the past when forms were paper printed. So pretty awesome. I noticed a new change I want to talk about. It used to be that contingency removal had to happen on a form called contingency removal. So I haven't even had a second to check this. We can look at it together. But when you can remove contingencies, an appraisal contingency, a loan contingency, or an investigation contingency, that always had to be done on a form called contingency removal. There is now in the request for repair, it actually says there's a line underneath the request for repair that says if this is agreed to, the investigation contingency is hereby removed. So this is something that just happened. I literally saw it for the first time yesterday or 2 days ago, and I need to investigate this because that's something that we need to be really conscious of.
Now, what did it say then?
I'll pull it up. As soon as we get on the computer, I'll pull it up. This is the request for repair, and it's talking about contingency removal.
Yeah.
So,
it's tricky for the buyer, right?
So the buyer has to know that when they make their ask of a repair or a $20,000 credit or a price reduction, the buyer has to know that if this is agreed to now, they're removing their investigation contingency. Okay, so that is really important. We're going to look at it. We'll look at it together. I want to cross-reference that with the purchase contract because I know that the purchase contract said that contingencies have to be removed on a contingency removal form.
Mm-hmm.
I need to see if they changed the purchase
Separate
contract.
form. They're
I need
saying,
to see if they changed the verbiage in the purchase contract.
right.
Because the purchase contract said it has to be removed on a CAR contingency removal form.
Got it.
CAR contingency removal form. Like, but even if escrow sent an instruction saying contingencies are removed, I'm not even sure previously that contingency removal would have been deemed a contingency removal. Because the purchase agreement actually said a CAR form, CR.
Right.
It said either the buyer is going to cancel or remove contingencies when their time is up. So it said cancellation agreement or contingency removal agreement, and they named the forms. which means to me, you have to use the CAR form. We'll look at that.
References are very specific.
I am very specific because I'm always looking for loopholes to get out of a contract. Right? If I have a buyer that wants out of a contract,
Right.
I'm looking for a loophole to get my buyer out of contract. If I'm on the listing side, I want to close every loophole so the buyer can't get out of the contract. So I'm always looking for loopholes. Right?
Yeah.
Whenever someone brings to me a problem, if it's on a buyer side that wants to get out, I'm looking how to get out.
I have a question. Is it possible to do a class on loopholes and just call
A
it
class on loopholes, that would probably be frowned upon.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants contracts broken.
True, but it's something that
Nobody wants to break contracts. So we have to operate in the world of good faith.
Right.
And good faith is offer, we're willing to buy the house.
Yeah.
Seller, I'll sell my house at this price. So loopholes are really, it's a gray area. I mean, you know, it's like beating a case on a technicality, right?
Right.
Even though you did the crime, a technicality got you off of it. It's like that kind of gray area.
I get it.
So we have a class on that. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe we
It
should have
allows our
after hour class.
the rookies to
Yeah, an after hour class. But I'm always looking for loopholes because it's important to me when an offer comes in and it's an all cash, no contingency offer. Someone's writing an all cash offer with no contingencies.
Yeah.
That means, it should mean that if that offer is accepted, that if they back out, they'll lose their deposit. That's what that should mean. The buyer's making a no contingency offer. That means they're going to put their deposit in escrow.
Right.
There's no contingencies. So if they don't do the deal, they're going to lose their deposit. Right? That's what it should mean. However, that's not the case. Because the seller still has to disclose. You can never relieve a seller of the obligation to disclose. A seller has to disclose.
Although they sell it or they list it as is.
As is, doesn't matter. The seller, you cannot be relieved of the obligation to disclose material facts about a property. They have to fill out a TDS. It has to happen. So unless they're exempt from the TDS, but then they have to fill out something called ESD, exempt seller disclosure. They're not exempt from disclosing something. Okay? There are mandatory disclosures. And when a mandatory disclosure is given to a buyer, by default in the contract, they will have 5 days to approve it. So there's a 5-day loophole. Once they get those disclosures, then they can back out. Even on an as-is, all cash, no contingency offer, they can still get out. So
There should be something wrong in those documents.
okay, so well, maybe, maybe not. I mean, so then everything is up to argument, right? Everything can be argued. Okay, as a listing agent now, I want to order a title report. I want to have disclosures filled out, right? I'm looking to plug every loophole. I want to have everything that's required of the seller to disclose to the buyer. I want to have ready so that when an offer comes in, when I give my counter offer to the buyer, I'm giving them everything that the seller is obligated to give. And then if they accept now, then all the loopholes are closed. Because I'm satisfying everything that the seller has to do now before the offer is accepted.
The seller has to do
The seller has
according to
according to real estate law in California.
exactly.
Yes.
All right.
Now, if I fulfill all of that with my counter offer number 1,
Right.
they gave an offer, I'm giving seller counter 1. Included with my seller counter 1 is everything the seller is responsible for. There's nothing left out. Then if they accept, then we have a locked deal, pretty much. If it satisfies all the loopholes. Right? Because then there's no new disclosure coming that they have a 5-day window to get out.
Right.
Right? So
Get it.
yeah. Now, yeah, I mean, you can't relieve from disclosures. You can't change the law. If you write in a contract something that's different than the law stands.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know, can you think of an example where there's a law? No smoking, right? There's no smoking, you're not allowed to smoke in your apartment. I don't know, I think that's a new law. I don't think you can, maybe you can, I don't know. If the law says you can't smoke in an indoor space, because it affects the other tenants, you can't smoke inside. Then in your if your lease says smoking is permitted, it's still not permitted because you can't change the law, right? So even though there's an agreement between the parties, you can't change the law.
Because it's a California law.
It's a law, yeah, it's a law. You can't change the law. So no matter what's written, you can't change the law. So you might have a landlord that wants to put in their lease, 30 days required to move out, 30-day notice or 60-day notice required by the tenant to the landlord, 60-day notice. But the law is that the tenant only has to give 30-day notice. Right. So the tenant only has to give 30-day notice, even though it says in the lease 60-day notice.
Yeah, I've been in that fight in the past.
Tenant only has to give 30 because that's the law. They can't change the law.
Because California law supersedes anything in
100%.
Beverly Hills or wherever.
100%.
What about if, for example, the landlord said, oh, I live in Vegas and I have my own contract, and then the tenant signed for it, for example, for everyday late payment, $500 or some of these crazy things, and then they don't return the deposit.
So anytime you have a dispute between the landlord and the tenant, then we have to refer our clients to a landlord-tenant attorney. We have to recommend them talking to an attorney.
But none of the attorney, at least as I know, that they are accepting tenant. They accept.
They only want to deal with landlords, not tenants. Yeah, it could be. I mean, there are 5 or 6 public resources that tenants can go to for help. Now, California is very tenant-sided, so it's very tenant-sided.
Family house, no rent.
No, but I'm saying it's very hard for a landlord to win in court against a tenant. Like, very hard. The judges are pretty much always going to try to side with the tenant. It's just how it is. It's just how it is in California. So, anyone disagree with that? I mean, that's how it is.
Yeah, it depends.
It's hard to be a landlord in California.
No, but if your landlord is lawyer or
if your landlord is a lawyer, they still have to obey the law.
Okay. I'm sorry, that 5-day loophole.
Yeah, so we're gonna look at contracts right now.
Okay.
I'm gonna show you. So I just want to make sure I'm sharing the screen. So I don't see my screen being shared. Zoom. Share screen. Desktop. Share. Thank you to Sean. I hope everyone at home is feeling well because there was some COVID going around. People are out of the office. I hope everyone. Yeah. All right. So now this today we're talking about Zipforms, and that's the place where we get all our contracts from. So Zipforms are accessed from car.org. car.org. Let's move the camera. So you know. Right, so I'm gonna all right, so we're going to log into car.org and you're going to click on transactions, which this is the silliest thing. How many times do you need to click this button?
The transaction center.
Transactions.
Transaction center, and then
Just keep following transactions. Transactions, access now, and then sign in. Okay, everyone has to sign in.
Yeah, so shit.
Hello.
Nice Brian speed.
And then validating membership, continue to transactions. Okay, going into transactions. All right, here we are. So this is
Transactions of form edition.
transactions of form edition. Sounds good. So here are our transactions. If you're in the dashboard, I mean, this is the place where you're going to access all the forms, all our California real estate forms. So
Zip form edition. Okay.
transactions. So what we're going to do is there's going to be a new button. You're going to hit new to create a transaction.
Okay.
What do you want to do?
I want to go back to where transactions.
Transactions. I don't. So you're either going to log into your dashboard. It's either going to take you to your dashboard or to transactions. Wherever we go, we just want to go on transactions.
I have to sign in.
I mean, even if we go to the dashboard, it's new transaction. Yeah, you're going to have to sign in.
Transactions.
Okay, I'm where the guy is parachuting us, whatever.
Transactions.
You can really just follow on the screen. I mean, you don't have to follow along with me. I just to learn it, see it.
Okay.
I mean, you really, if you try to keep up with me, you'll never keep up. It's easier just to look on the screen if you can see that part. I don't know.
Okay. This is where I am.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can just click on. I don't know if it's the first transactions link. I don't know why they have all. It's so hard to get to. I don't know why they make this so hard to get to.
Okay.
It's just clicking on transactions. So when you're finally in this kind of window, there's going to be a button that says new transaction. When you click new transaction, then you're going to have to say, are you doing a listing? Are you writing an offer? Is this a lease? I don't think it really matters which button you choose. This is just for categorizing what you're doing. So it really doesn't matter. Let's just say we're writing an offer. We'll say new purchase or offer. We'll click that. Doesn't really matter. And then you're going to have to give a name to your transaction. And this is so you can find it. I usually name the transaction the property address. So let's call it 301 South Maple Drive. And just for the purposes of the class, I'm just going to call this class. And you can do anything. It's the residential property. We're just categorizing it, active, fine. And then we're going to hit save.
Can you teach us how we can save one as a template?
Templates.
So we can use it always.
Sure. So I'm going to call this transaction purchase agreement.
Oh yeah, we can name it purchase.
Name it purchase agreement. Then let's residential active save. So
Oh, you have to save it first?
you have to save it in order to get to the next screen. When you name the transaction, then you're going to save it after you name it.
And then you can do, for example, some part of that now, some part of that in 2 hours, still is saved.
Yeah, whenever you work on anything here, when you exit, it should save, hopefully. Now all the forms are over up here on the upper right-hand corner where it says all forms. So you can click that, and here are all the forms. Now these are the forms in the California Association of Realtor Library. So I don't want to lose anyone. I know I go fast. So I think it's better just for you to watch than to actually try this right now live. So logging in from when I log into car.org just takes me here to the dashboard. I'm going to transactions. I hit this new button, and all I did was name the transaction. I named it purchase agreement, and now it appears here. I can go in or out of this transaction now because all I did was I pressed new, I named it purchase agreement, and I pressed save. So now it's here. It's saved as a transaction. So I can log out. I can come back in. Here it is. I click there. Boom. Takes me right to the screen that I was at before. Now, because this is a purchase agreement, we need to add the form purchase agreement. So the way that we do that is we're going to go here to all forms. And we're going to hit that arrow. So this pops out. And we're looking now at the California Association of Realtor Library. So the residential purchase agreement is actually the very first form there. The third one is the residential listing agreement. So they are in alphabetical order also down here. If you see CAR put a period before there. So they start out at the top. Because this is the most accessed form. So they just made it easy for you to get to.
For lease also it's here. No?
Okay, now if you want to get lease documents, you see how there's a drop-down box up here?
Yes.
You can click that and you can select lease. These are categories. I can select the lease category and it'll only give me documents here now that are associated with leases. All right, so that's pretty cool. I use that. This is all. But you can select lease and it'll only give you leases. You can select disclosures, it'll only give you disclosures. So that's pretty cool. So let's look at the purchase agreement real quick. So I'm just showing you how to navigate Zipforms. So we can do this, you know, we can do this. I want to look at the form called request for repair. So how do I get request for repair? So I'm in my transaction, I click on the documents tab. I go over here in the upper right and I hit that arrow and I need a request for repair. So I'm going to search for the term repair and it's going to only show me forms that have the word repair in them. Request for repair, I'm going to click it and it adds it here to my transaction. Let's take a look real quick at the request for repair. So when you're in a transaction, you made an offer. The offer was either accepted or there was a counteroffer and another counteroffer. Eventually it gets accepted, hopefully. Then you're in the deal. Now the buyer does inspections. After inspections, the buyer is now aware of everything wrong with the property. Then the buyer has to decide if they are still willing to move forward at the current purchase price, or if they're going to ask the seller to lower the purchase price or give them a credit for some repairs that they were not previously aware of. Right? They didn't know that the electrical panel has a recall on it and it's a safety hazard and can ignite on fire at any time. They didn't know that. So there are electrical panels called Federal Pacific that you had one.
Yeah, and
Very common.
my condo place was built in 74.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Very, very common. You guys are going to have inspections at a property that the inspector says that the electrical panel has been recalled. So there was a company called Federal Pacific that basically manufactured millions of these electrical panels, and they were sold all of the different manufacturers' names. And the problem with these electrical panels is the breakers don't trip. So usually when there's too much current being sucked on a line, the breaker trips to prevent an electrical fire. The breakers in this particular panel never tripped. So let's say you have a 30 amp or a 15 amp line that's drawing 20, 30 amps, that line is getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter, and it ignites on fire because the breaker didn't trip. So that's a danger. That's a very reasonable ask to ask the seller to fix hazards or to credit you for a hazard.
Inspector, the general inspector.
The general inspector will definitely call out one of these electrical panels. Yes, yes. If he doesn't, that's really bad. All right, but for sure. I mean, I'm sure that's Inspector 101. Okay, so here's a request for repair. It's an interesting form because it can be used for more than just repair. You would think a request for repair would be only for repair, but it's not. So this is usually filled out by saying request for repair number 1, and date prepared is going to be today. It's in accordance with the terms and conditions of the purchase agreement, dated whenever day that your offer was made. And then it'll have your property address, you have the seller's name and the buyer's name. Okay, here we go. You can check the box called buyer requests that seller prior to the final verification of condition repair the following. So if we check this box, we're asking the buyer to repair stuff. Section 1 and section 2 has to do with termite. If we did a termite inspection, which we should have, then section 1 is actual damage. Wood rot, termites, that's section 1. Section 2 is preventative. A seller will usually not do section 2. Section 2 is preventative maintenance. So The termite guy is going to walk around the house and he's going to poke all the wood with a stick. And sometimes that stick is going to go through the wood, which means that the termites ate all the wood and left the paint on the outside. So it looked like wood, but it was just paint. So the termite company is going to give a report that says this wood needs to get replaced. This wood needs to get replaced. It's usually under windows, door frames, anything that's rotted out from water damage, termite, that's going to get replaced. Probably going to be a recommendation for fumigation, where they tent the house and they fill it with gas. Totally normal. But section 2, that section 1 is actual damage. Section 2 means that the termite company saw holes around the property that didn't have screens on them. So that's not damage. I mean, it could be considered damage, but that's really like, you don't want rodents to come in through those holes and start living underground. So those need to be screened, but that's section 2 because it's preventative, right? So section 2 is preventative. Section 1 is actual damage. Section 2 is preventative. We usually ask the seller to pay for section 1. Now, if we look at C, it says buyer requests that seller credit buyer X amount of money at close of escrow. So instead of asking the seller to make a repair, we can ask that they credit. I will always recommend, most of the time, I will recommend the buyer get a credit instead of asking the seller to make a repair. Why? Because the seller is going to want to make the repair as cheap as possible. The buyer is not going to be happy with it. And the buyer is the one that has to live there. And if the seller can do the repair, then the buyer is going to have to do the repair all over again. So better just to get the money to the buyer and they'll make it.
If there is a, let's say that before you close the escrow, there is a leakage from the second floor coming down here.
Okay.
And then what's the best way you ask? Because if you ask the seller to repair, it's going to go ask for the insurance company. Then when you buy it, then you can't get the insurance because it's a claim.
When did the buyer find out about the leak?
The buyer is not at the house.
When did the buyer find out about the leak?
Oh, but just 5 days before the close of escrow.
It happened during
The seller has to provide the property in the same condition as when they went into escrow.
Right, you could have backed up.
If the leak happened right before closing,
the
seller is responsible for fixing that before close of escrow.
No.
If they can't fix it before close of escrow, the buyer has options. They can extend escrow until it gets fixed, or they can close escrow and withhold enough money. Escrow can hold enough money to make the repair and still close. This is up to the buyer. Now, if the lender finds out about it, the lender might require it get fixed before they'll close, before they put their money into escrow.
Because damage the floor, they damage the carpet. So
that's big.
But then you have to change the. So you have to get the accurate estimate.
Now, if there's that much damage, that's an insurance claim.
Oh,
I will not want to close escrow until that's fixed. Because if the homeowner's now claiming insurance, I don't want to take if the buyer takes ownership, they're taking ownership with the damage.
With the damage, yes.
And the insurance company is not going to pay the new buyer. The new buyer is not insured by the old insurance company.
It can get.
I'm not closing in that situation. In that situation, it's going to have to get fixed first.
So the buyer has
every deal is a different situation.
Right.
That's why I asked you, when did the buyer find out?
Okay.
These are very important details.
Okay.
If the buyer found out during inspections that there was previous water leak. During inspections, they found it out. Then the buyer has to take that into account. Do they still want to move forward at their current purchase price?
Because
or do they want to discount now?
They will have the contract. They say there's nothing wrong with it, but when find out it has been
water damage is something very serious.
Okay.
Because it's often difficult to find out where the water problem is coming from. That can be a problem. Is sourcing where it's coming from. Whenever there's a water issue, you first want to fix the problem and then make the repair. You want to fix the source of where that's coming from and then do the repair. But first thing is to fix the problem. And it's hard. It's hard sometimes to trace it. In California, in our area, the best time that you can inspect a property is after a rain.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm inspecting a property after it rained, I tell my buyer, you are so lucky that it rained because now the inspector can see any problems from rain. It never rains here. It's the best time to buy property. Yeah.
I bought a used car in LA, didn't rain for a year. When it rained, my whole front floor got flooded.
I had a Cadillac. I loved my Cadillac. I had this big Fleetwood Brougham Cadillac. I loved it. 19 feet. And I had huge speakers in the trunk. I love that. When I went through the car wash, the water would come in because under the canvas roof or whatever it was, all the metal must have been rusted out, right? So every time I went through the car wash, it would get wet in the car.
And they knew.
So you never know what's going on underneath.
Somebody knew.
When it's important, things get wet. It's important. Okay, so on this form, you can request a credit, but check this out. You can also request that the buyer modify the purchase price. So you can say the revised purchase price shall be blank. So here you have an opportunity to move the purchase price. If you're asking for a very large credit, you might need to do this option, the lower purchase price, because your credit can't exceed closing costs. For a buyer, their closing costs are going to be loan fees. They're going to reimburse the seller for a portion of the property taxes that they prepaid. It's not going to be a lot of money that you can ask for here. Whenever there's a credit, before you make this request, you need to speak to the lender and just say to the lender, we're going to be asking for money. What's the maximum we can ask for? You don't need to tell the lender what it's for. Just say to the lender, what's the maximum credit this loan will allow? And it's going to be a different answer for every single deal that you're in. It's going to be a different answer. And it's because the source of the money has criteria. If you're dealing with a mortgage broker, they can get money from 20 different people. And each of those 20 people have different standards of what they're willing to lend on. So when a mortgage broker is talking to your buyer and they're finding out from your buyer what their situation is, they're thinking in their head, which lender am I going to place them with? Which lender do they qualify with? And that lender says, this is the maximum. One of their criteria is this is the maximum credit they can get. So that's why it's going to be different every time. You always need to contact your lender first.
Is there any fixed rate or percentage for the closing costs?
So whenever I'm estimating closing costs, I figure 1%.
1%?
Yeah, so like on for a seller, I figure if it's a 5% listing, I'm figuring their total closing costs will be about 6%.
For the seller.
5 plus 1, plus 1. That's rough. It's usually correct. It's usually
for the buyer.
For the buyer, I also figure 1%. It's not going to be that much, but I always figure it at the worst case scenario. But the best person to ask is escrow. What is it actually?
Yeah.
Now, if you're dealing,
they have a different thing. A little bit slightly different because they charge it per dollars or something.
Right.
Because
yeah, per thousand. They charge per thousand. Okay. Okay. Now, if you look at number 4 here, number 4 says, if seller agrees to all of buyer's requests or some of buyer's requests and buyer accepts seller's partial agreement below, buyer removes the investigation of property contingency.
Yeah,
see this?
Yeah, but you still have the other option.
Whoa, yeah, but if you don't check anything,
yeah, then you
look at this. If you don't check anything,
right.
If seller agrees to all of buyer requests, number 4, buyer removes the investigation of property contingency.
Buyer
Is that new?
That is new.
Oh.
That is brand spanking new.
But usually the other agent asks you, if I do that, will you remove the contingency?
I have never before, a couple of days ago, heard of a contingency removal being done on a different form other than contingency removal. This is the first time I'm seeing this.
Oh.
It's a contingency removal on the request for repair that if nothing is filled out, automatically removes the
It's interesting because it's going with the verbiage is, or some of buyer's requests.
Because
Buyer accepts
right.
seller's partial agreement.
Right, so the seller has the option to respond to the buyer. And the seller can say, I agree to all of the buyer's requests. And the seller signs. And by the seller signing there, all of a sudden the inspection contingency is gone, removed.
Oh,
Now, if the seller doesn't agree to everything and does partial, then there's a buyer response to the partial on the bottom. Buyer accepts seller's partial agreement, or buyer does not accept partial, and then it's going to go back and forth again.
oh, so the contingency remain.
Right.
Okay.
But just understand, when the buyer makes this request and it gets accepted, they're going to be removing their inspection contingency.
If you check the 4B for.
Okay, let's look at 4B. Buyer releases seller from, oh, that's automatic. It says or. Buyer removes those contingencies identified on the attached. Well, B is automatic. If the seller is agreeing to a credit, you're releasing the seller from liability for those items. If the seller is giving you a credit for the defective electrical panel, they are no longer responsible for the electrical panel. That's what that's saying. So buyer releases seller from any loss, liability, expense, claim, or cause of action regarding the disclosed condition of the property. It's a release. The buyer did their inspection. They are asking the seller for a credit to repair all the stuff that was found in inspections, and they're releasing the seller from any obligation or liability from those things because the seller's giving you credit for it. So that's fair, right?
A real life example.
Yeah, please. Yeah,
No,
that's a real life example, right? I mean, you can't get a credit for the electrical panel, and then 2 years later the house burns down because of the electrical panel, and then you go sue the seller for the electrical panel.
Right.
Right. That doesn't make sense.
Right.
Okay, but this is a very interesting thing that this now appears in the contract, and like I would love to bring Michael Rosales in and show him this. I don't, he might not even realize this. Let's first look at the purchase agreement.
You just walk by.
Yeah. So let's first look at the purchase agreement. So I'm going to hit the back button here and go to a different form. Save your changes. Sure, why not? Yes, always save your changes. Leave site. Sure. Uh-oh. Okay, we're back here. Okay, California residential purchase agreement. Okay, open my previous workspace. Okay, so basically just added the purchase agreement. So over here on the right side, I have two forms here: request for repair, purchase agreement, and quick purchase agreement. So this is, I'm going now into the part of the purchase agreement. By the way, I think we're doing purchase agreements tomorrow. Okay. And I want to look here at the condition of property. So if you look at 7B, it says the property is as is, right here. All offers are as is. Okay, it's as is the property to be. When you do your inspections, you're going to find out stuff that you were not previously aware of. That's what you can ask for. If you're making an offer right now and there's a hole in the wall where you walk in, you're not going to ask a credit for the hole in the wall when you have a request for repair. It's obvious there's a hole in the wall. You're making your offer knowing that. That's not something you should be asking for on your request for repair. It's something that you were not previously aware of. Okay, so contingencies and removal of contingencies. This agreement is contingent upon buyer obtaining the loan specified. Okay. Buyer is advised to investigate the insurability of the property as early as possible. This is very important now for us because all these insurers pulling out of California, right?
So you have to call the insurance company to see get insurance on this one or not.
Right, that's very important. And find out how much it costs. Okay, investigation of property. This agreement is contingent upon buyer's acceptance of the condition of and any other matter affecting the property. See paragraph 12. Let's go to paragraph 12. Paragraph 12 says buyer investigation of property and matters affecting property. Buyer shall, within the time specified in paragraph 303, have the right to conduct inspections, investigations, tests, surveys, and other studies. Okay. Buyer investigations include a general home inspection, an inspection for lead-based paint, inspection for wood-destroying pests and organisms. So we're going to do a termite inspection. Any other inspections of the condition of the land and improvements. Great. Investigation of any other matter affecting the property other than those that are specified as separate contingencies. Buyer investigations include but are not limited to an investigation of the ability and cost of general homeowners insurance, flood insurance, fire insurance. Okay, fine, no problem. Without seller's prior written consent, buyer shall neither make nor cause to be made invasive or destructive buyer investigations, except for minimally invasive testing required to prepare a pest control report, which shall not include any holes or drilling through stucco. Inspections by any governmental building or zoning inspector or government employee. Okay, what this is saying is you can't make an invasive or destructive inspection. That means if your inspector is underneath a sink and the wall is moist, but there's no mold showing from what you can see, the inspector is not allowed to punch a hole in the wall to see if there's mold behind the wall. That's called invasive. You need seller's permission for that. Okay. You're also not allowed to call a government building or zoning inspector during escrow. That means if you're buying a house with a converted garage and your plans as the buyer is to make it a garage again. The buyer is buying a house. The seller made the garage into a rec room, right? They're not using it as a garage anymore, but your plan is to turn it back into a garage, and they did it without permit. And you think you're going to get a government person to now, you're going to call government and say, hey, I know of an illegal garage that was turned into a rec room. You're not allowed to do that, right? I guess there have been buyers in the past that have called the city and said, I'm aware of an illegal garage. Can you come to that property and flag it? And they will make the seller turn it back into a garage. So the buyer is trying to get the seller to pay for it instead of them paying for it.
Can you find out if it's not illegal? You can call
the purchase contract is making the buyer liable. If the seller can prove that it was the buyer who called the city on them, now they can sue the buyer and say, you're going to now do that. Yeah. So anyway, I'm just pointing that out.
So where in the verbiage is that particular?
This is all underneath buyer investigation of property.
Okay.
So the part that I wanted to get to here is
real fun part.
The fun part is going to be here. It's going to be time periods, removal of contingencies. Okay, so basically here, buyer may, I'm looking at this one under number 2. Buyer may, within the time specified, request that seller make repairs or take any other action regarding the property. CAR form RR, which is request for repair. Seller has no obligation to agree or to respond to the buyer's request. If seller does not agree or does not respond, buyer is not contractually entitled to have repairs or other requests made and may only cancel based on contingencies in this agreement. What that is saying is that the buyer can ask, but the seller does not need to give. The seller only has to sell at the sale price.
As is.
As is. The seller said, here's my property, I'm selling for $1 million. Ask away, but I don't care. I'm selling for $1 million. That's my contract, $1 million. That's all the seller has to do. It's up to the buyer if they want to move forward or not. Okay. Now the buyer has 2 choices. They can remove contingencies or they can cancel the agreement. So let's look at this. So it says here, number B3, buyer shall, by the end of the time specified in 3L, which is the contingency, deliver to seller a removal of the contingency or cancellation of this agreement. And it's calling out the forms, CAR form, contingency removal, or CC cancellation of contract. It's calling out those 2 forms. Okay, by it calling out those 2 forms means, to me, if escrow sends a document that is a contingency removal from escrow, doesn't count. Because this contract is calling out those 2 forms. It has to be on a CAR form, contingency removal, or cancellation of contract. However, if any report or information for which seller is responsible is not delivered within the time specified, then buyer has 5 days after delivery. So that's what I was talking about before. If there's any disclosure that the seller is responsible for, then buyer has 5 days after delivery of that to deliver to seller a removal of the applicable contingency or cancel the agreement. So if a new disclosure comes to the buyer that the seller is responsible for, this now opens up a new 5-day window. Even though their offer was all cash, no contingency, if the seller gives us something they're responsible for after there's an acceptance, there's a new 5-day window here, okay? So I'm just gonna continue because this is important, continuation of contingency. Even after the end of the time specified in 3L, buyer retains the right in writing to either remove the contingency or cancel this agreement. So even after the end of the time specified, that means if you have a 17-day inspection contingency, day 18 goes, day 19, day 20, day 21, day 22, they can still back out on the inspection contingency, even though it's past the timeline.
Oh, 5 days after that.
No, as long as it hasn't been removed. As long, if time does not remove a contingency. So even though the buyer had 17 days, but they didn't remove their contingency yet on the form CR, the contingency still exists.
Well, you just said it, ask for it.
Now the seller can insist that the buyer sign that form, and they'll give a notice to perform to the buyer, and that'll give the buyer 2 days.
2 days.
Right, but this is saying continuation of contingency. This is very important. Because you guys as agents are gonna come back to this paragraph to tell your buyers, don't worry, you have the right, the right to have that contingency until you remove in writing the contingency. Until you sign that form contingency removal in writing, the contingency exists. But don't worry, you're not gonna lose your deposit, don't worry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now we need to contact Michael Rosales and show him what's going on. Let's see what he said.
Bring him to the court. Oh, no. If it is a seller's market, they're not gonna actually take your limit over. You know, the difference between buying, it is a crush of buyer property.
Put this in there, John, because it motivates the seller to accept the.
Now?
Yeah, I mean,
I can't see the
Then you
camera.
have to wait.
if there is a multiple on the property and the seller's market is a good area, you want the top money, so I'm not gonna do any of this, I want just my money.
Yeah,
It happened.
it happens.
Also, you have to enter.
But it's good to know this, you know, for yourself.
Yeah. But sometimes you say, yeah, my buyer will remove all contingencies
your
for a
buyers.
better deal, but this customer.
No? Phone is required. Yeah, you just have to fill out the one that has stars. Fill out this info and then continue. Probably you're gonna, come to the.
Yes.
اینکه بهش بگه یه چیز جدید اضافه شده بهش
So Michael Rosales knew about it, but it's new. He knew about it because the latest meetings that he was having with the broker meeting, they were talking about it. So here's the issue.
He canceled the meeting yesterday.
Here's the issue for us. When we give the request for repair, let's keep this in mind. Your buyer may not yet have called the insurance company, right? Your buyer may not have yet called the insurance company to find out if the property is insurable. You might be sending this form before your buyer has done everything that they need to do, right? Like, let's think about this.
True.
What if they didn't call their insurance company yet? They send this request for repair. The seller agrees. They can no longer back out if they can't get insurance, or the insurance is 4 times what they thought it was going to be.
Or what about the loan?
The loan is a different contingency. We're only talking about the inspection now. They can still get out on a loan contingency. But I'm just talking about, like, what happens if they didn't call the insurance company yet? Like, there's things like that's only one issue. Like,
that is the buyer has to call, not the agent buyer.
The buyer needs to call, but we need to remind the buyer because they don't know. The buyer really doesn't know. So let's just look at this real quick and see how would we go about. Michael right now is looking at this, thinking how do we address this? He's looking at it right now, saying how do we address this?
That you said we have to mark in order.
Oh, okay. So basically, it says buyer removes. Well, if seller agrees to all, buyer removes the investigation property. You have to check the box, except the following. That's what you do. You have to. So we need to be diligent as agents and check that box, except the following. Yeah.
So we have to write the following, which is in.
We're going to have to do that. Yeah. We're going to have to say
insurability. Can you
insurability?
Insurability in this one.
Yeah.
So if you
I'll tell we figure it out. I don't want to bother.
You can get the insurance. You can cancel it.
Well, let's talk about that in 1 second.
Yeah, because if you can't get insurance, then.
In some area, they put it extremely dangerous fire zone. We go to Beverly down here on the extremely.
You buy insurance.
When the people that buy that, they know that's just the California. Insurance.
All right. So let's pretend we're the sellers now. We don't care, right? I mean, if we're the seller and we agree, they remove their inspection contingency. But we often work with buyers, obviously. What could buyers' risks be?
Not being able to get insurance.
Insurance. What else? I mean, I guess that's pretty much. So.
Really high rated because I think at the end you can get kind of insurance. Even for the fire zone, you have the insurance. The price is different.
Yeah, I mean the properties that are in the mountains are hard to insure.
All of them they have.
They blow it out.
California Fair Plan is covering all the.
Right.
And it's the only one covering it, nothing else.
Yeah. So what's going to happen is the seller's agent, the listing agent, is going to receive this, and they're going to say, insurability, call your insurance company. Like, how long does that really take, right? So then the buyer's going to have to get on the phone with the insurance companies. And because if the seller is agreeing to this, they don't want to have any open contingency.
Yeah.
Right. So I would say insurability is one of those things that we need to start asking our buyers to search for immediately.
Chancellor is specifying on the private remark that insurability is not my consent. You have to take case. I'm not responsible for it.
So you also want to keep your deal together.
Right.
If a seller says that to me, I'm going to be like, whoa, red flag.
Red flag, yeah.
Red flag. I need to call the insurance company. So, you know, we just need to be aware that when we send when we send a request for repair, if we've had a conversation with our buyers that they're safe until they sign the form contingency removal, that's no longer the case. This is effectively removing contingencies without signing that form, right? So this is new because we've always needed to sign the form contingency removal, and now this is a way of removing the investigation contingency without signing that form. So this is a new phenomenon.
But can we write except the following?
Yeah, you can put anything. Yeah. So what'll happen here maybe there's something on title that hasn't been cleared yet. So there's something on title that is getting resolved, but it's not yet resolved.
Yeah, maybe they have a case.
Or maybe you have a 3-day inspection, and there's still the title report hasn't been given to you yet. So you'll do buyer everything except approval of title, right? Because it wasn't given yet. So that's when you would use it. But I'm just making you aware now that there is a situation where your inspection contingency can be removed without using the form contingency removal. So that's pretty important. Let's talk real quick. So everyone should know that they can log into CAR and where the forms are. Let's just talk real quick about checklists. So I have in my shared folder, let's see. So So I have a shared folder called it's called Agent Resources, KWBH Agent Resources. In my Agent Resources folder, if you don't have it, again, email me, say, please add me to your folder. I will email it. I will add you to the folder. In my Agent Resources folder, I have the last folder here. It's called Zipform Desktop Installation. So you can go in that folder and you can install either the Mac or the PC software. And then I also have here KWBH transaction checklists. So here are residential and commercial checklists. In residential, we have a regular residential checklist. This is from February 2022. I have an older one here, don't know why. Only because it's on our KW. So here's a residential 4 units or less. So if you have a duplex or triplex or 4 unit, then you'll use that form, that checklist. If you have a 5 unit to 1,000 unit, you'll use this one. It's the residential 5 or more unit. That one is updated in 2022. And then we have this one, 1 to 4 units, and that one 4 units or less. So let's see. This one looks more up to date. And then we have a vacant land checklist. And then for leases, we have a lease checklist. So here is the KW checklist for leases. So let's just look real quick at the most common, which is the residential checklist.
We have similar this one for lease as well, no?
Yes. There's a checklist for houses. This is for houses and condos.
Yes.
So basically, these are all the files that we're going to need to have a complete file and get paid. So when I sign a listing, I save the file as number 1 listing agreement. When I write an offer, I save the file as 2 purchase agreement, right? When there are counter offers, I save the file as 5 counter offer. Right, so basically, if you look at the checklist, there's a B and a S, that's buyer and seller. When I for the listing agreement, buyer does not apply. So only the seller signs the listing agreement. On the purchase agreement, the buyer is going to first be the one signing it because it's an offer. And then when there's an acceptance, the seller is going to sign. So I'm going to check the box B when that gets signed. And then when the seller sends it back signed, I'm going to check that. Now I have a complete RPA, complete residential purchase agreement. So basically I'm filling out, I'm adding all these. But what I do is on your computer, you should have, let's say in your documents folder, you should create a folder inside your documents folder called properties. And then inside the properties folder, you'll have addresses, folders with addresses. That's how you can stay organized. So let's just say here's a properties folder in my drive. In my properties folder, I have 123 Crest Drive, 3212 Livonia. I'm just making up. And then inside that folder, every document that has to do with that property will be in that folder. That's how you stay organized. And then the documents inside the folder will be numbered according to this checklist.
That's very
right. So this is a lot of work, but here this is how you do it. You go through all of these to make sure you have all these documents. Brian, our transaction coordinator, will handle the file for you. So Brian Chung will do this for you. I recommend we all use our transaction coordinator. He'll make sure that everything is buyer checked, seller checked, everything. So in order to get paid our commissions at the end of the deal, every one of these forms has to get uploaded into Command. And he will take care of that. He'll get the form signed. He can do signatures. He'll handle the entire file. I think he charges $450 to do it.
Yeah.
But if you use our escrow will pay him, and it's free.
But the thing is, the escrow, the issue is usually the seller chooses.
Right, but so you can fight. It's not 100%. If you're dealing with a listing agent who's very adamant about using their escrow, then you really have no choice. Then you'll have to pay Brian. But the reason that any agent wants to use their escrow is because their escrow officer is good.
And it's helping them with all the paperwork.
No, but there won't be problems. Like, it's just important to have a good escrow officer. When you have a bad escrow officer, things aren't handled on time. Things are happening late, closing late. Things aren't done. So a bad escrow is bad for everybody, bad for the buyer, bad for the seller, causes problems. Your client will never use you again, like that kind of thing.
Yeah,
So,
and some of them are just so good. It's just kind
rude.
of same as, but some are nice. They're just same as your assistant. They do.
right, you never know what you're gonna get. Hopefully we all deal with nice agents. Unfortunately, there are some bullies out there. So that's the way of the world.
Yeah, especially if they know that you are.
I push back pretty hard though. Like if I hear of someone not being treated respectfully, I push back. So now, that being said, sometimes it's very tempting to call an office manager and report an agent that is not being nice to you. If you start up with someone's office manager, there could be repercussions in the future as far as that agent has another listing that you have a buyer for, and they are no way going to accept your offer. All right. So it's a small community of agents, even though it seems like it's a huge one. It's a small community. So chances are you will meet that agent again on a listing that they have and you need for your buyer. So we want to keep the peace as much as we can. But if there's an issue, come to me. We'll talk it out. That's it for today.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can we go through those steps where you get to the form?
Where you get to the forms, absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to write them down real quick.
Absolutely. So basically,
CAR.org.
yeah. So you're going to go to car.org. car.org, and then you're going to sign in. That's step one. So going to car.org is step one. Step two is sign in. So I'm going to sign in. And that should take you to this page, hopefully. Has anyone sat in this chair taking a picture?
No, I was trying, but I think they don't have that way.
Not anymore?
I don't think so. After COVID, I don't think that they opened up the list. I'm not sure.
Are you there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, you wanted me to do it on my computer?
Oh, no.
I'm just writing
down steps. Okay, so the next step is to find this giant circle that says transactions.
Okay.
Access Realtor Secure Transactions. You want to click on the transactions, like that's step 3. Boom, transactions. That's going to take you to the secure transaction page where you're going to find this one that says transactions again. CAR member benefits, transactions, Lone Wolf transaction, Zipform edition. Access now. Digital forms, completion, and transaction management. Access now. So you want to click access now on transactions.
Click access now.
Click access now. Thank you. Good.
There we go.
Okay, then you're going to get to this screen and you have to press continue to transaction. I don't know why they make you go to
You
this.
need to pass 70
Yeah,
steps.
it's ridiculous. I don't know why. Continue to transactions. Ready? Click it. Continue. Okay, that's going to open up a new window and you're in. Hopefully.
Okay, my question is, you're welcome.
Yes.
How we can
Make a
save
template?
that exact
Okay, templates. Let's talk about templates.
that purchase agreement
Okay,
that you
so-
are.
5 steps, right?
Wait, how you use your trans-
It's 5 steps. Sign in, CAR or sign in. Transactions,
Continue.
access now, continue.
And then you go to forms.
And then you're in the dashboard or transaction area. Should take you to the transaction area.
Go to my transaction.
And then you're gonna hit new. If you want to start a new transaction, or you're gonna go down here to one of your previous transactions. Okay, now in our situation, we pulled up a purchase agreement. I'm gonna go here to documents.
Big documents.
No. No, you can.
That's
You
different.
Then step number 7.
New transaction.
Step number 7 is new, is hit new, because you're gonna start a new transaction.
That's okay, because I had that for 6.
You're gonna click new. Okay, just click new, and then you're gonna name the transaction and press save.
Okay, address,
You have to name the transaction with the address usually. Yeah.
and then click save.
Yeah. Okay, so for an offer, I'm gonna add 2 documents to my offer. I'm gonna also add a market conditions advisory. And I'm gonna add
What is that?
It's in there already.
I'm adding it. I'm just creating right now a template. I'm creating a
Oh,
template.
template.
A template.
Now I have
So-
to write this down there.
No. This is advanced stuff. This is creating a template that it's just saving me steps now. So I can fill stuff out to where I don't have to do it again. So right now I'm creating an offer template. My offer template has a purchase agreement, market conditions advisory, and a statewide buyer and seller advisory. Okay. Because I want to submit my offers with those 3 forms. Now I might also go into my purchase agreement
They have your pay.
and I'm going to put my name here, Keller Williams Beverly Hills, Jonathan Wallack. The DRE number here is 014287775. Put my DRE number here. I might check a box here because where it asks for there's a box here that talks about natural hazard zone disclosure.
Mhm.
There's a provided by box here. I'm going to check that provided by. And I'm going to switch that to my NHD or seller's choice. That's something that I always fill out like that. I might also have a clause. So liquidated damages and arbitration are need initials by both parties. We're going to do the offer tomorrow. So,
Oh.
But this is paragraphs 28 and 31, 29 and 31.
Yeah.
I might put as an additional term here. Seller agrees to additional paragraphs. 29 and 31. So that might be something I don't want to forget, but I'm always going to have in my offers. Okay, now I can save this as a transaction by pressing save. And I can go back and I have my list of transactions here. If you look, here's the transaction I just did, purchase agreement, right?
Yeah.
In from transactions, I can go and click this down arrow here. And that'll bring up this box. I can save as template. See that?
Oh, really? I don't have that option.
You don't have save as template option? Did you save it?
Yeah, I did. Did you put the check mark?
So if
I have only save as PDF. Interesting.
So are you on the transaction screen?
Yeah.
Go to dashboard. Transactions.
Purchase agreement.
So if I click that arrow, I should have save as template come up. No? Okay, I'm gonna look at your screen, but let me show you what I'm doing. So if I save this as template, I can name it purchase agreement template. And then I have options. Do not automatically apply this template to new transactions. Automatically apply this template to purchase transactions. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to hit save right now. Do not automatically apply. Now, when I go to create a new transaction, let's say I'm writing an offer on 1111 Livonia. I can go new purchase offer, and I can call it 1111 Livonia Ave. It's residential. And down here, I can select my template, purchase agreement template.
Yeah.
And now if I press save, it creates a transaction and it automatically loaded these 3 documents in. And my purchase agreement will have my information already filled in. If I go down here, I can see that my clause is there. The box is checked. I introduced it, right? That's how you create a template. I'll come with you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So today's Zipforms is just how to access the forms and checklists. So how to get the checklist. That's all today's class is. Tomorrow we're doing the residential purchase agreement.
You have to open up an account.
You can join the share. But you already joined it, no? Did you already create it?
I think I did.
I think you did too. You have to sign in.
I don't know my password.
Then you can press forgot password. Yeah, I don't know.
Just put the password in there.
Thank you everybody for joining. Yeah.
Thank you, JJ.
Yeah, guys, the best time to.
Okay.
Anytime. Thank you, guys.
Anytime.
Anytime.
Yeah.
Anytime.